Thank you very much, and thank you, man. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming this evening. I want to introduce you to Joe here. Joe's with the Ohio Democratic Party, so he's here to film the event this evening and take it back to his colleagues. Let me first start. Matt gave me a little bit of a presentation, but let me tell you a little bit about my roots and where I came from and what I've done. We'll try and spend a little bit of time there. And then what we'll talk about is some of my beliefs, and then I'll open it up for questions. I know when I was outside, a couple of you asked me, what's your history, what's your background? I grew up in western Pennsylvania, coal mining, steel mill town. My father was a railroad worker. My mother was a nurse. Grandfather was a coal miner. Blue collar, union background. I tell everybody those were the greatest roots that I could ever have because I learned the value of a hard day's work. I learned the value of sitting around the kitchen table and understanding how to make ends meet. I learned the value of a good family unit. My mother and dad struggled every day to make things work for us, and I'm proud that today, my dad's 85, my mother's 84, that I can still have the opportunity to talk to them about those good old days. My dad lost his job when I was 8 years old. That kind of gives you an idea of the struggles we had to go through. So I do understand the struggles of sitting around the table, and I do understand the struggles of the blue-collar family. I was the first person in my family to go to college, paid for my entire education. I worked as in a factory 1 year. Second year, I worked at a county park, Union Park, and for the last 2 years, I worked as a truck driver. I paid for my college education, got out early, took an internship in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at that time. I had a degree in business administration from Indiana University of Pennsylvania and had a concentration in accounting, and I was going to work for Grant Thornton, which was one of the largest CPA firms at that time. Spent 2.5 years in a CPA firm, and I became the healthcare expert. I was the individual who they took and went out, and I did audits of healthcare facilities, whether they be hospitals, whether they be nursing homes. That was my primary duty. After a couple years, I became their, quote, healthcare expert. Believe it or not, I'm 22, 23 years old, and now all of a sudden people are asking me to come out of state and go to different places and look at their books, look at their businesses. One of my businesses that I worked at was in Wadsworth. It was a chain of nursing homes that we were actually doing the review of their cost reports, their Medicaid and Medicare budgets. I spent close to a year, and then one day I got a call from the gentleman, and he asked me if I would be interested in coming to work for him in Wadsworth, Ohio. Now, I got to tell you, folks, I had no interest in coming to Wadsworth, Ohio at that time. I was one of the youngest individuals to have an opportunity to be a partner in a large CPA firm. I thought that I was going right in the direction I wanted. I was just engaged to my wife today of 28 years in a few months. Just engaged, and the last thing I thought I could do was ever go to her and tell her, hey, we're moving to Wadsworth, Ohio. She was happy where she was at. So my dad told me, I sat down with my dad and I said, what should I do here? How do I get out of this? Because I'm really happy where I'm at. I'm going to be the youngest partner. He says, well, tell the gentleman from Wadsworth that you want X amount of money, which was double what I was making, and a new car. He won't go along with that, and you'll be on your career and continue down that path. Little did I know when I made that phone call back to the owner that as soon as I told him what I needed, he said to me, okay, when can you start? And that's the reason, and that's how I came to Wadsworth, Ohio. Now, there's a side to that story which I always like to throw out because it shows you there's win-win situations everywhere. When I got here, the first thing I did was looked at the books of the company that I was now working for. And I thought, wow, they're paying me twice what I was making in Pittsburgh. I found out that they were paying the guy that I replaced twice what I was now making. All right, so talk about a win-win situation. I ended up making double what I was making, and they were paying half of what the individual I replaced. That's where I started. I spent a year with him. At age 24, I actually went out on my own. And that's an important story because it's very difficult. I believe in the American dream. I believe our country has a great opportunity we should always have that opportunity to live the American dream. At age 24, I stepped out. I convinced the bank to lend me enough money to acquire a nursing home. I bought my first nursing home at age 24, and I can tell you 20 years later, I owned and operated 23 facilities throughout the state of Ohio. And it wasn't that easy. You just say, wow, how'd you get to 23? I can tell you I had ups and downs. I had payroll that I I had to make. I had to sit around the kitchen table every day wondering how I was going to pay the bills in my own house, let alone make the mortgage and make the payments in the business. But we were able to do that. During that period of time, we created 1,500 jobs. I employed over 3,000 people. I saw what it was like to make a payroll, and I tell people that the one thing you can get from me is somebody who has signed more of the front of paychecks than the back of paychecks. So I spent those years until 2000, and in 2000 I sold that business. Now I've always been an entrepreneur, and I've always gotten involved in other businesses, so I can tell you that over my 28 years, I've owned, operated, and invested in over 60 businesses because I love to see the American dream working in different business sectors. So I've had the opportunity to be involved in own car dealerships and a number of things. I've seen what it takes to make a payroll in a number of businesses. I also had one opportunity that Matt talked about. I also was asked in 2000 if I'd be interested in running for president of city council. And I can tell you, I just sold my business. Really wasn't looking to get into politics. I had already served the city of Wadsworth as a fireman, as a board of zoning appeals, and a planning commission member. So all volunteer. You know, but I always believe in giving back to the community. So when I was asked if I was interested in running for president of council, I said, you know, first I said no, and then they asked again. Anyway, long story short is I did end up running and I won. And in that election, I ran against somebody who had actually been on city council for 14 years. And I stood up and I told him the same things I'm saying today. But I'm standing here because I want to bring business sense back to government. I want to serve my community and the constituents of that community. And I want to show you that I can continue to do what's right and we can balance this budget together. I can tell you that I was elected, and over the next couple of years, I served as president of city council, and as Matt said, then I was asked to run for mayor. The goal was one thing. The true goal was to serve, but the second goal was to figure out how to balance this budget. And everybody might say, well, it's only a city budget, but it was an $80 million budget. And I learned very quickly that if you bring business acclimate into a city government, you can balance it. And I'm proud to say that after 8 years, not only did I balance the budget, but I left it with a small surplus, and I decided that's it. I'm done, I did my job, it's time to move on. After that, I did acquire a couple more businesses, but it's interesting because the business that I acquired was a car dealership, and some of you may know about that one in Wadsworth, Ohio. I got asked as soon as I was done as mayor, would you be interested in acquiring a Chevy dealership that was getting ready to close? Now that Chevy dealership had been around for almost 48 years at the time, 50 years. And the concern was the jobs. And I can tell you when I acquired it, I wasn't looking to become a Chevy dealership. I was really looking around and trying to figure out a way how to save 40 to 45 jobs. Ultimately, I was handed the franchise by General Motors. I spent the next 14 months stabilizing a business that was going to close, and I saved those jobs. And to this day, if I made a phone call to all those people that were employed and asked them to stand behind me, I'm sure that I would get many of those people come stand behind me because they knew that that was the exact mission that we had, was let's save the jobs, and we were able to do it. Only to find out on May 1st when I received a letter from General Motors that all my work really was coming to an end because General Motors had made the decision that my dealership did not meet the future of General Motors. I tell everybody that's the darkest day in American capitalism. The day that the government can step in and say, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. Nobody should ever have to see that happen to them. And I got to tell you, that was a turning point for Jim Renacci. Because in 2009, I started to see something that was something I'd never seen before. I saw the loss of the American dream. I saw a government that was spending more money than I knew my kids would never be able to pay back. I saw a congressman by the name of John Bocherry saying that he would not vote for cap and trade, only to go down to Washington and vote for cap and trade. I saw a congressman talk about health care and how he wasn't going to vote for it, and then turn around and vote for it. I saw a congressman who said he would stand up for car dealerships, and I saw him also cast some votes to stop the reinstatement of car dealerships. I saw a guy that voted 94% of the time with Nancy Pelosi, and quite frankly, as Matt said, I decided enough's enough. I'm going to step back into this ring and we're going to get this country back. So what I did is I jumped into the race. Again, most people realize nobody knew who Jim Renacci was. I mean, the citizens of Wadsworth knew who I was, but nobody else knew. And I fought for over a year, and I learned a lot from Mr. Miller back there. Matt was a good opponent because he taught me some things, and of course, hopefully I taught him some things too, and it made us both better. But as you know, I ended up winning the election, the primary election, and I've moved forward since then. And over the last 9 months, actually I say 9 months, it's over a year now. Over the last year, I've gained the support, not only of the Republican Party, but I've also gained the support of some very conservative groups in D.C., the House Conservative Fund, Citizens United, Ohio Right to Life, and a number of groups that are on my website. So you'll see that for somebody who wasn't known very well a year ago, I probably have over 150 people now endorsing me. But I think what they're endorsing is the concept of getting the seat back for you. That's what they're endorsing. They're endorsing that there's a guy that can do this. And I'm very proud to say that over the past year, I've been able to meet with people and businesses. I've seen an older gentleman at age 78 with a tear in his eye say, "I'm scared to death, please help us." All the way down to a college student who said, "You know what, I voted for Obama, but I'm scared of where we're going." If you start to read and listen to the people that I've talked to over the year, you realize that there's a big concern. There's a big concern for what's going on, and quite frankly, we need to stop that. So what we're doing now is we're in the last 60 days. And as I tell everybody, the only thing I can ask from you is to come to these kind of meetings. If you have any concerns or questions about me, tonight's your night to ask. I will also tell you, and it's kind of a joke with my campaign staff, I don't have a degree in political science, but over the past year, I now have a master's in political science. And I'll tell you what I've learned. I've learned that when you're winning, the opponent can only do one thing. He can't stand up and talk about what he's done. He can't stand up and talk about his votes. All we can do is send out information and commercials with half-truths and misleading statements. Because that's the only way somebody who's down in an election can try and recover. I was told that a year ago and I didn't believe it, but quite frankly, I'm starting to see it. And I'm sure some of you are seeing it too. And that's okay, because what I tell everybody is what a lot of things you're seeing and hearing, they're half-truths, they're misleading, but you're welcome to always ask me. You're welcome to go to my website. There's a website out there today called therealjimrenacci.com. Take a look at that website. It explains some of the mischaracterizations and some of the issues that my opponent seems to want to bring up. You know, it's interesting, if I did invite my opponent to this town hall. I invited him all 4 town halls. The first 2 he didn't show up. Last week he showed up close to 20 minutes, 30 or 25 minutes late. So he did show up to that event. But it's interesting, he's been invited to this one here this evening. I can tell you that we will continue to move forward over the next 6 weeks, and I will continue to work no harder or no less than I have over the last year and a half for you, so that we can get your seat back. All right? And it is your seat. And we need to make these changes, and the one thing you can do, you know, people say to me, what can we do? Well, you can change your congressman. And if there's one thing, one vote that should make you want to change your congressman, actually there's probably 2. But cap and trade, you know, our state is about 85% coal-driven, our energy. There is no congressman in the state of Ohio that should ever go back to the U.S. Congress that voted for cap and trade. Now, it's interesting, my opponent will tell you, well, cap and trade, and he did this at the last meeting, he said, well, just so you know, cap and trade was a Sarah Palin issue, cap and trade was a John McCain issue, cap and trade was a Republican issue. And he's using that. You'll see that.